Is that ridiculous? I'll tell you one thing there. You people that are against fighting, you should be ashamed of yourself. You took advantage of that to make your point on fighting. You should be ashamed of yourself doing something like that. I did a little research. Since 1999, there's been 8 guys commit suicide, and not one of them was a fighter. And when I played, I remember 4 guys committing suicide. Not one of them was a fighter. But you jumped on this with both feet. You should have been ashamed of yourself. But the ones that I am really disgusted with, and I hate to say this when the kids are listening, what George LaRocque said about a bunch of pukes that fought before Stu Grimson, Chris Nyland, and Jim Thomson, the reason that they're drinking drugs and alcoholics because they fight. You turncoats, you hypocrites. There's one thing I'm not, is a hypocrite. You guys, you were fighters, and now you don't want guys that make the same living you did.
Right. So I'm not a hypocrite, but I'm certainly uninformed, right? And so like it really rankled me, the lack of compassion and understanding, because there was a correlation, and it's been proven between concussions and addiction. And what were your thoughts after that? I mean, somebody calls me a puke, obviously, and somebody's
Well, yeah, I was
not gonna feel good
actually
about it.
I was downtown Toronto with the Primo brothers, Keith and Wayne Primo, doing a charity for sick kids. And we're sitting there, and that game had come on, and I thought I heard my name, Joe. And this guy down 4 tables down, he goes, "Hey, Jim." He was sitting there with his kids. He goes, "Cherry just called you a puke on Hockey Night in Canada." And then at that time, I had a BlackBerry, and then it started beeping, bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was actually Stu and Chris had nothing to do with it. It was me who said it. And what I was talking about was who I was, my story. And if you do look back to John Cordick and the trail of disaster goes on, there is no ghost. It's all fighters. So I don't know where, I always had that argument with Don, like Rick Rippon, Bobby Probert. Like, it doesn't matter how the enforcer died. But for me, the drugs and the alcohol had a major effect on me wanting to commit suicide 3 times, had a major effect on, my anxiety, staying up, drinking 2 bottles of wine before we're playing Detroit Red Wings and Bob Probert and Joey Kosher. It's how I dealt with my anxiety and fear, right? And then you bring pills into it and whatever else. So I was just speaking from my life. And, George LaRocque had brought Stu and Chris into it innocently because he didn't do his due diligence. They had never said a word. So this became this, crazy time. And then Stu was a lawyer out in Nashville, and Stu and I played together in Anaheim. So we had asked Don for an apology, and he refused it. And then what happened was his son,
Tim,
I forget his name, Tim had told a connection that his dad was going to be fired if he didn't apologize. And then the next week on Hockey Night in Canada, you can watch that. He apologizes and, said that he threw us under the bus and whatever. So Don and I had never talked since that. And I'm going to share a little great story with you on the positive side of Don Cherry. So my wife and I own the Aurora Tigers. We brought the 13 survivors from the Humboldt crash. A friend of mine from St. Albert, actually, Chris Joseph, lost his son Jackson on the bus that night. So I reached out to Chris to say, "Listen, would you guys like to come down? We're going to put you up for 5 days." And a whole bunch of people helped out Joe. We took him to a Leaf game. We took him all these different places, and it was an amazing, amazing time. So I reached out to Luba, Don's wife, by email. And remember, Don and I wrote Don a letter to apologize. I tried to say, "Listen, we're both in the community. We're both trying to help people. It's silly to have this impasse, right?" Never responded. Mm-hmm. I had hockey parents who would see him at games and, never responded to my letter. So anyway, she said, "No, Don's completely booked. He would have loved to seen the boys because the only time Don and Ron saw them was when they were all in comas in the hospitals in Saskatchewan after the crash." So I woke up the next morning, and at 12:11 a.m. in the morning, Luba had emailed me back to say, "Don will be at the Hall of Fame 2:00 on Thursday. Don't let the boys know. It'll be a surprise. So he changed his whole schedule. But the ironic part about the story is you saw the suit that he wore that night when he slammed me on Hockey Night in Canada. I remember him and I haven't talked in years. When he walked into the Hall of Fame, I almost fell down. He had the exact same suit on when he walked in to see the Humboldt crowd. And he knew I would have known. And I'm like, oh, look at that, eh? He was making a point to me. I know it. But we had a really nice time. Him and I had a really nice conversation. And obviously the boys were in awe to see Don Cherry. So it was a wonderful afternoon. So that's the last time I talked to him.